Peter Pan and Wendy, Chapter 5, The Island and the Islanders. Whenever Peter was away from the Neverland, everybody there slacked off and took things easy. But when he was known to be returning, the island woke up and became full of energy. At the present moment, the Lost Boys were busy looking for Peter, the pirates were busy looking for the Lost Boys, the Redskins were busy looking for the pirates, and the wild beasts were busy looking for the Redskins. They were moving round and round the island after each other, but as all were going at the same rate, in the same direction, they did not overtake each other, and they did not meet. This was quite a change for everybody. For during Peter's absences, things were so slack that the pirates and boys, if they met, merely bit their thumbs at each other. There were at this time 6 boys on the island. They were stealing along in single file, wrapped in the skins of bears which they had killed. Each had his hand on his dagger, and each looked a trifle bloodthirsty, though he was not particularly feeling so. The first boy was Tootles, a kind, humble, melancholy creature who never met with anything but ill luck. The next was the cheerful Nibs, then the lively Slightly, intensely conceited, but nothing like so conceited as his captain, Peter. The fourth boy, Curly, was always in scrapes and mischiefs. He was sure to be blamed if anything went wrong, and was pretty safe to deserve it. Then came the twins, and as Peter did not know one from the other, it couldn't be expected that anybody else did. The twins indeed were quite uncertain themselves as to which was which, but they always kept close together, lest they should become more bewildered still. A little while after the boys had passed, came a sound of villainous singing. It was impossible to mistake it for any song but the pirates' blood-curdling ditty. Avast belay, yo-ho, heave to, a-pirating we go, and if we're parted by a shot, we're sure to meet below. A shocking set of scoundrels prowled stealthily on the track of the Lost Boys. Cecco the Italian, the blackamoor man, Bill Jukes, Cookson, Gentleman Starkey, Skylights, Robert Mullins, Elf Mason, the Irish boatswain Smee, not a bad sort, Noodles, whose hands were fixed on backwards, and many other ruffianly rascals, some tattooed, some ear-ringed, some scarred, each completely armed with pistols, cutlasses, muskets, daggers, and extremely hideous to behold. Anybody would have run a mile to escape from this horrible crew, but they were treated like mere dogs by their captain, Jas Hook, who was the biggest and most dreadful of them all. He lay in a rough chariot which was pushed and pulled by his men, smoking 2 cigars at once by means of a clever contraption he had invented, and waving his terrific iron claw. The most unpleasant thing about Hook, next to the iron claw, was his politeness. The more dangerous he was, the politer he grew, and there was only one thing on earth of which he was afraid, and that was the sight of his own blood. A few minutes after the pirate horde had disappeared, there followed the Redskins of the Pickaninny tribe, their bodies painted and oiled, their eyes gleaming. They were armed with knives and tomahawks, and decorated with strings of scalps. Their chief brave, Great Big Little Panther, went ahead on all 4s. The beautiful Princess Tiger Lily strode proudly in the rear. The Redskins moved in perfect silence, the only noise being a rather heavy breathing, which was unavoidable because they had just been indulging in a huge orgy or gorgy. Otherwise they were soundless as shadows. On their heels very shortly came a huge procession of wild beasts, man-eaters of the fiercest, lions, tigers, bears, and a variety of smaller savage animals, all with their tongues hanging out, a sight to make one shiver. And last of all, leisurely waddling and wriggling by itself, crawled a gigantic crocodile. Each of these parties were keeping a sharp lookout in front, but none of them ever thought that danger might be creeping up behind. The 6 lost boys fell out of the march first. They threw themselves on the grass close by their underground dwelling and talked about Peter and the stories he brought back to tell them. All too soon, however, they heard an ominous chanting in the distance. They recognized the pirate's song, slowly but surely drawing nearer. And at once they disappeared like so many rabbits, except Nibs, who went scouting. For 7 large trees were there, each with a large hole in its hollow trunk, and these were the doorways to the lost boy's home beneath the sword, which Hook, for all his searching, had never so far been able to find. As the pirates approached, however, the ferocious Starkey spied Nibs slipping among the trees, and he pulled out his pistol. But Hook clawed his shoulder and ordered him to put back his weapon. "Do you want to bring Tiger Lily's redskins on us and to lose your scalp?" demanded Hook in his black and threatening voice. "That boy is only one. I want to capture all 7. Scatter round, men, and search for them." When the obedient pirates were scattered about the wood, Captain Hook was left alone with his boatswain, Smee. He talked to him long and earnestly, telling him the whole story of his evil, adventurous life. But Smee could not make head or tail of it. The only part he understood was when Hook began to speak of Peter Pan. "It was he who cut off my arm," said Hook, with dark looks. "Oh, I'll tear him for that," and he brandished the iron claw. "He flung my arm to the crocodile that happened to be passing by." "I have often noticed your curious fear of crocodiles," said Smee. "Not of crocodiles in general," replied Hook, "only of that one crocodile." Then he continued in a hoarse whisper, "Smee, listen. It liked my arm so much that it has been following me ever since by land and sea, licking its lips for the rest of me." "It's a sort of compliment, you might say," said Smee. "I don't want compliments," snapped Hook. "What I want is to get hold of Peter Pan." He sat down as he spoke upon a large mushroom. "That crocodile would have had me long ago," he went on, "but luckily it once swallowed a clock. The clock keeps on ticking inside it, and so I hear the tick-tick and escape before it can reach me. Ho-ho!" And he gave a hollow laugh. "Sooner or later," said Smee, "the clock will run down, and then—" "Aye, that's it," groaned Hook. "The clock may stop some day, and then—" He jumped up. "This seat is hot. I'm all about burning. What ails the thing? A red-hot mushroom?" They examined the mushroom carefully. They pulled at it, and it came away in their hands. There was no root there, only a hole, from which smoke ascended. The 2 pirates stared at the smoke and at each other, and they exclaimed with one voice, "A chimney!" Sure enough, it was the chimney of the lost boy's house underground. They always kept it stopped up with a mushroom if enemies were lurking near. Their merry voices could be heard quite plainly down below. They thought they were perfectly safe there. The pirates replaced the mushroom and soon perceived the holes in the 7 hollow trees. The boys had mentioned in their innocent, cheerful prattle that Peter Pan was away. Both Hook and Smee had heard them, and Hook stood a long while meditating. He was plainly thinking of some criminal plan. Smee was all impatience to know it. At length Hook spoke, slowly through his clenched teeth. "We will return to the ship," he said with a horrid smile, "and cook a large, rich cake with green sugar on top, very thick and tempting. We will leave this cake on the shore by the mermaid's lagoon. These boys will find the cake, for they are always swimming about there, and they will gobble it up. You see, they have no mother, and they don't know how dangerous it is to eat rich, damp cake. Ha ha ha! And so they will all die. Hook roared with laughter, so did Smee. The prettiest plot that ever I heard, cried Smee, and they danced and sang together. In the midst of their wicked exultation, however, their singing was checked by a very, very tiny but very distinct sound, gradually coming nearer, nearer, clearer, clearer. The crocodile! Gasped Hook, shuddering violently, and he bounded away in desperate alarm. Smee followed him. Yes, it was the crocodile. It had passed the redskins who were tracking the other pirates, and was trailing itself along after Hook. There was now a moment's breathing space, and the boys came up to the open air again. But they were scarcely above ground when Nibs rushed in among them with a pack of howling wolves behind him. "Save me!" cried Nibs, and he fell exhausted. The boys had no weapons that would keep off wolves, but they were extremely brave, and they said to each other, through the baying of the wolves, what would Peter do? Then they immediately answered themselves. He would look at them through his legs. The 5 boys, for Nibs still lay on the ground, stooped down and advanced backwards upon the wolves, glaring at them between their legs. The wolves, after one long moment of hesitation, turned tail and fled. Nibs picked himself up. "There's a great white bird," he cried. "It's flying this way, and it moans as it flies. A wonderful thing." "What kind of bird? What does it say?" "I don't know," said Nibs. "I never saw one like it. It moans, 'Poor Wendy.'" "There are birds called Wendies," observed Slightly. "There it comes!" exclaimed the boys. "Hello, there's Tink!" Wendy was almost overhead. They heard her plaintive cries, mingled with the shrill tinkle of the jealous Tinker Bell, who was darting at Wendy and pinching her savagely all the time at one side and another. When she was near enough to the boys, she shrieked out to them, "Peter wants you to shoot the Wendy! Quick, quick!" The boys were accustomed to doing whatever Peter commanded. While they rushed to fetch their bows and arrows, Tootles, who had his weapons with him, cried, "Tink, get out of the way!" And he aimed and shot in great excitement. Wendy came falling to the earth with an arrow in her breast.